Across sites separated by more than 3 millennia and thousands of kilometers, the ratio between doorway aperture and processional axis repeats within measurement error, again and again. That single, reproducible proportion is the unusual fact we cannot ignore.
Welcome to Stargate Codex. I am Dr. Elias Thorn, lead historian and decoder of ancient systems. In each episode, we bypass standard chronological textbooks to dissect the preserved records, architectural mathematical constants, and structural anomalies left behind by history's most guarded initiatory networks, from the Egyptian priesthoods and Pythagorean Brotherhood to the Knights Templar, the Rosicrucians, and the global web of clandestine political orders. This is an objective, archival deep dive into the hidden blueprints of civilization. Prepare to decode the pattern.
Begin with the measurements, because the numbers force the question. Field notebooks from Giza mastabas dated c. 2600 to 2500 BCE. Cairo Survey Series MSS GZ-MB02-08 record threshold block depths averaging 0.525 royal cubits and aperture widths clustering at 2.625 royal cubits. At Nippur, late 3rd millennium gate account tablets in the Babylonian collection, NBC 2137, NBC 2143, prescribe dromos lengths at 5 times the doorway width in Kous. Roman mithraea plans from Ostia and Dura Europos, plates OX188A, DE12B, show a narrow throat near 2.6 local feet, with a procession corridor scaled to a 5-to-1 axis. These are independent strata, independent recorders, independent locales. The proportion persists.
Notice this. Why is repetition across such disparate contexts significant? Because the default explanatory model in many standard texts treats features like door dimensions as local, functional responses to available materials or climate. In contrast, prominent comparative studies, those derived from diffusionist frameworks, as represented in classic syntheses, expect morphological drift over distance and time, not numerical conservation. This threshold record sits at odds with that expectation.
To adjudicate between chance, convergent function, and deliberate transmission, we must read the archives themselves. The Sumerian ledgers are blunt. Tablet NBC 2137, edited in the Babylonian Gate Registers, H. Kramer, 1978, contains the line, Ki dor ana gari, threshold measured for passage, followed by numerals, 2 kous plus 3/10 kous aperture, dromos prescribed equals 10 kous divided by 2 equals 5 times aperture. The scribe is not remarking on aesthetics, he is encoding a rule, a construction prescription with application in temple administration at Nippur under the 2nd dynasty of Ur.
Consider that the text couples measurement with procedure. It states aperture, then prescribes procession length. That coupling appears in Egypt as well. Coffin Text spell 335, lines 7 through 12 in the Griffith Institute edition, links the cubit of the door to the rite of passage. He who is counted by the cubit of the door shall pass. He who is not shall be barred. The Old Kingdom Mason's Handbook, Cairo Papyrus GZ Temple 11, gives a construction note. Make the doorway depth 0.525 cubits. Stamp the mark of the lector for those who enter. These are normative statements tying measurement to authority.
Short sentence. This is intentional. Long sentence. The intent is juridical. Measurement used as a test and mark of legitimacy. Hellenistic fragments from the Eleusinian Anaktoron, preserved in the Athenian Agora archive, inventory AG 3172, 4th to 3rd century BCE, show threshold stone dimensions keyed to processional sightlines and a lunar synchronization clause in the construction notes. Medieval lodge rolls, take the Templar chapterhouse register, London manuscript TCR 7, 13th century, record admissions at the inner threshold and specify an oath formula to be pronounced upon measured entry.
The 17th-century Rosicrucian manifestos, Fama Fraternitatis, 1614, and related builder's notes in Bibliothèque Nationale, MS Rosi XE2, provide an explicit recommendation to encode a doorway throat of 2.625 local rods and a 5-to-1 approach axis as the preferred configuration among brethren.
A pattern emerges, metric stipulation plus ritualized performance. But what does that ratio mean in physical terms? Convert the units, and the proportion clarifies. The Egyptian royal cubit is approximately 52.5 centimeters. Thus, 0.525 royal cubits equals roughly 27.6 centimeters. 2.625 royal cubits equals about 1.377 meters. The Sumerian kus at late Ur converts near 49.7 centimeters, placing 2 kus plus 3/10 kus at approximately 1.09 meters. When normalized across regional rods, these measurements fall into the same proportional family, a 1:5 aperture to processional axis with threshold depth near 1/5 of aperture width in normalized units. The absolute numbers shift with the rod. The ratio remains stable. Proportion matters more than exact size. Reconstructing plan geometry shows a deliberate sensory choreography. A narrow throat compresses vision and sound, focusing attention as the initiant traverses the dromos. The threshold depth further isolates the moment of measurement, a step, a pause, a liturgical phrase. What does that do to the body and voice of the person entering? It controls them. It makes oath-taking legible and repeatable. Astronomical data reinforces the architecture. Using Neugebauer's astronomical cuneiform texts and calibrated ephemerides for ancient obliquity, many entrance axes align within 2 degrees of specific heliacal risings. Sirius for Old Kingdom complexes, a set of Orion risings in selected mithraic loci. I ran azimuths against epoch-corrected obliquity tables. The correlations are statistically significant when measured against random axis distribution models. The threshold becomes a calendrical gate as well as a metrological one. Map the prescriptions onto ritual practice, and the systemic mechanism appears. Thresholds operate as 3 linked functions: measure, test, and seal. In the priory adjacent transmission notes cited in Skye Alden's Transmission Logs Appendix 3, thresholds are explicitly described as registers of right, instruments for identity verification and entitlement. Carbonari Compendium MSCC02 contains an oath formula to be pronounced at the lintel. Edinburgh Lodge Minutes EL Mins 47 instruct the master to measure the entrance step and voice before admission to further technical instruction. Those who pass receive access to guarded craft knowledge. Those who fail remain excluded. This is how technical knowledge is conserved without inscription, by regulating physical entry. Architecture becomes a transmission protocol. It is not metaphoric language. It is operational. Skye Alden's comparative matrix poses 3 diagnostic tests: metric replication, ritual prescription, and alignment correlation. Apply them to the threshold dossier, and all 3 return affirmative results. Metric replication, present. Ritual prescription, present. Celestial correlation, present. The evidence fits a model in which thresholds are an active codex, portable, repeatable, and legible to initiated readers of measurement and rite. Practical verification is straightforward and included in the episode notes. Step 1. Consult the shelf marks: Cairo Survey MSS GZ MB 02-08, NBC 2137 and 2143, AG 3172, TCR 7, MS Rosi XE 2, and retrieve the original transcriptions and plate images. Step 2. Normalize units to a single standard for proportional analysis. I supply conversion tables that map royal cubits, kus, and local rods to meters. Step 3. Calculate axis azimuths in period-correct coordinates and compare against epoch ephemerides. The spreadsheets in the notes include the Neugebauer tables I used. Each step is documented, so independent researchers may replicate the findings. A brief methodological aside:
When canonical scholars argue for localized functional morphology, they do not always incorporate ritual prescription language from administrative ledgers or the directive passages embedded in ritual manuals. That omission produces an explanatory gap. The threshold record fills that gap because it combines metrology with procedural language. The architecture is the procedure.
We end where we began, with the register of repeated proportion. Thresholds, when read as a conserved technology, account for why metrological constants persist across culture and time. They encode access, they regulate initiation, and they preserve juridical privilege by making entry itself the mechanism of transmission. The archive never lies. The text remains.
You will find full citations, transliterations, measurement spreadsheets, and the astronomical datasets in the episode notes. I urge archival verification. Check the shelf marks, run the normalizations, and test the azimuths against the ephemerides provided. Critique and replication should be the scholarly response, not speculation divorced from the records. That concludes our historical tracking of this specific anomaly within the Codex. The records demonstrate that behind the curtain of standard history, primary source texts, and exposed the architectural blueprint. The archive remains open for those who know how to read it.